Hi everyone, thank you all for coming here tonight. My name's Adrienne. I have the pleasure of moderating tonight's panel, where we have a rather large topic of the Web3 Roadmap and the future for Web3. Fortunately, we have three wonderful people here to share their expertise and their experience within it. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Monica. I'm actually coming from Miami. So this Lisbon scene has been amazing so far. It's only been 2 days. But anyways, I am head of community at Upstream. It's a no-code solution to start a DAO. We like to say it's the easiest way to start a DAO. So I love community. I love DAOs. So I'm really excited to be here and able to share my perspective with some other thought leaders.
My name is Shevchenko. I'm actually living here in Lisbon, staying here. I'm originally from Ukraine. Unfortunately, needed to go out of the country because of freaking war. But I have found already some new friends here in Lisbon. I'm working on the protocol that is called Aurora. This is an EVM compatible chain. It is similar to Polygon, Avalanche, and others. We have some of our specifics, and hopefully we would be able to go into it during the panel.
Nice. Hi, everyone. I'm Ella, originally from New Zealand. Also got sucked into living in Portugal and never looked back. I'm co-founder and CMO of MindSpider, and we build sustainable supply chains for the clean energy transition. What does that mean? It means we basically track minerals from mines to electric vehicles or to consumer electronics.
Great. Can we maybe just hear a little bit about what drew you down the rabbit hole and attracted you into Web3, like what your hopes were coming into the sector? We'll go reverse order.
Sure, reverse order. Well, actually, I ended up in Ukraine 5 years ago. I got invited to a DTNE conference, decentralized conference, and Vitalik was all the talk of the town. He still is the talk of the town, actually. But yeah, I was enthralled from the first moment I discovered this tech and met my co-founder in Berlin and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, for me it was 2015. I was finishing my academia research. I was working on I'm a PhD guy, the technical, all the mathematical modeling, stuff like that. And I was looking into some additional challenges that are outside of academia. And I figured out that some of the things are pretty similar. So I was working on the graphic cards and how to apply them for generic computations. And then I was just occasionally coming to a meetup where Vitalik was, and then people were saying or asking questions about proof of stake and stuff like that. And I thought that the blockchain is an absolutely great thing to apply for the governments, because in Eastern Europe people are not trusting their governments at all, right? Everyone knows that the government lies, and I thought that, wow, it will be a nice thing to do a proper election system, right? When people are not able to to do any manipulations with it, and this is something that is keeping me up for 7 years and trying to push blockchain technology forward in order to get to the point when the politicians are elected using the blockchain.
All right, so I actually used to do community before it was cool, before it was like all Web3 talked about, and I joined Upstream about a year ago, and my boss literally sent me an 8-page PDF of DAOs, DAOs. So I'm like, what is this? What is decentralized autonomous organizations? But we actually pivoted as a company because before we were a Web2 platform that was connecting people around the world through building the future or the tools of the future for community. We realized DAOs are the future of community. So about a year ago, I started hosting women breakfasts at different crypto conferences. I started educating my community because we had to pivot not only our company, but we had to pivot our community to Web3. So that's actually how I really learned about DAOs, and I learned about the benefits of Web3. But I also learned that the best way to get into Web3 or get into that roadmap is to really figure out how it's going to change your life individually. So for me, as a community person, just giving people the ability to vote and share what they like to do and make decisions is why I think DAOs are super important. And yeah, that's why I am bullish on Web3 and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you all for that. So there's a lot of ground to cover when we think about Web3. I'm pleased to hear the references to Ethereum as a Bankless contributor. I am an ETH maxi. Now, Alex, I would like to ask you maybe to talk about a topic that hasn't explicitly come up around DeFi, but which kind of led the first time that Web3 came into more mainstream consciousness. And I'd like to ask maybe for your opinion on where we are in terms of DeFi and its evolution, how far it is from its potential, and what challenges you see that part of the ecosystem addressing.
Yeah. So I have several thoughts on this, right? As a leader of the chain where there are quite a lot of DeFi applications that are deployed. Well, first of all, market conditions are kind of hinting us that DeFi is dead, right, at the moment. But I think that is going to resurrect at some point in time. It is super simple because what DeFi is providing to people is the services that are provided to them in normal life by banks, right, and maybe some additional institutions. And from that standpoint, this is an essential thing. And kind of the thesis of the blockchain, the value of decentralization, censorship resistance, user is in control. It is very hard to understand how to convert it into the value, right? But if you're talking about DeFi, well, the value there is pretty simple. You just use it, you stake or whatever, borrow, lend, sell at the right moment in time, and you're getting money, right? And I believe that's the reason why DeFi was booming, right? It is super simple to understand what is the value. Though the DeFi is extremely complicated, right? Just for ordinary people, right? If you want to grow, like I need to go there, stake some tokens, or I need to have several tokens, put it there, then I get LP tokens, then I need to stake it. Like it's kind of all complicated concepts, right? Just to try to explain to your mother what is the LP token is, right? It's not that simple. And from that standpoint, I hope that the next big thing for the DeFi ecosystem at the moment when the markets are going to turn back green would be services that are going to simplify things while still keeping the core values of the blockchain, that it is a user who is in control. So from that standpoint, the developments from both sides, from developments from the neobanks side, right, when Revolut is adding crypto there, but can I like you not own this crypto because you don't see the key, like it's not your wallet that is connected to Revolut. It's just Revolut holding on their own balance crypto for you. So they are moving from that side. And I hope that Web3 companies are going to move a little bit closer to Revolut experience, right? Because for some geeks, Curve interface is absolutely great. But for the majority of the people, they are going to open this website and say, what is this thing? There should be this change happening. But in general, I do believe that DeFi is going to rise like a phoenix, and everything will be good there. Just because the narrative there is extremely simple. You just put your money in the platform, you get more money, right? It's super simple to explain to the mother and to any housewife, right? Or houseman, house husband. What is the proper name for it?
It depends if you're married, husband, I guess,
Yeah.
So just to paraphrase, I mean, the value of DeFi, I think, is fairly well understood. I'm sure it's well understood in this audience. And the next wave, or the thing that we need to overcome now, is making it easier, simpler, improving the UX, and helping more people get involved.
Yeah, in general, so yeah. And also for anyone in the auditory who is thinking of launching their own token and maybe DeFi project, maybe you need to wait a little bit until the market is going to come actually to the bottom, because nobody knows whether it is a bottom or not. How to identify the bottom, I don't know. Like I'm a really bad DeFi investor. and in general, I'm really bad investor. I'm good at building stuff. I'm not very good at managing my money. Um, uh, but yeah, just wait a little bit and try to find the proper moment in time, because at the moment there are not enough liquidity. There are lots of problems. People are not believing in the blockchain and all of the stuff. So just wait a little bit until it's going to get back a little bit on the rise, and yeah, that will be the proper time to launch your project.
And Ella, this is an area that you have a lot of experience in, that intersection between kind of traditional companies, people that don't have a familiarity with Web3, with blockchain, and Web3 itself. Like, can you tell us a little bit about how you've encountered that, what you think is happening right now, where we're at in that evolution?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to add to what Alex said, that I hope the next, bull run, or the next, evolution of DeFi is a little less just, borrowing and lending and yield farming, and a little more payments and bridging to the real world, I mean, I think if you go to any conference and you see the people who are deep into DeFi, it's still a bunch of white guys. And, I mean, we were building these tools to give the unbanked access to banking, and that is still the dream. And I think, of course, we are starting to implement that. But I hope in the next wave of, of technology, that we really actually onboard a lot of these, customers in developing countries who do actually not have access to a bank. And I hope that they kind of leapfrog, into DeFi, same way they leapfrogged into mobile tech, maybe.
And can you share your perspective on some of the challenges around that? Like, it sounds like such a simple statement,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the reality of doing it is anything but.
Oh, it's absolutely anything but. You're right. Yeah, because I mean, you still have to educate people, and I think coming back to what you said, I mean, first and foremost, it is about the interface. It is about the onboarding. I think in terms of education, there's going to be a lot of earn to learn to earn, yeah, the other way around, models, where we really, pay people in tokens to kind of learn and then onboard them to the protocols in that way. So I think there's some really fascinating models. Obviously, I work in the B2B space, so I'm not an expert at onboarding, consumers to these kind of products. And I have to say it's a battle to onboard even huge companies, possibly even more so. Because, if you're an unbacked customer, you have a certain degree of, desperation at the current system that might push you to learn how to use DeFi. Whereas, B2B or companies in the real world are a bit afraid of Web3 still. I think that's changing, in part thanks to a lot of tools like NFTs. We see Disney hiring people for NFTs now, Starbucks introducing NFTs. So there's some gateways for companies to enter in the space. And I hope we find easier gateways for consumers as well.
It's really interesting that I can't not touch on Reddit's recent activity, because I think we as a sector have been really focusing on how do we educate and impart knowledge and make it easier to understand. What they did was allow people to come in without even really knowing or thinking that they were coming into this new or foreign world. They were just buying digital collectibles, and they could buy them with a credit card.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Honestly, I think that's what we need to do. You don't always have to know that you're in Web3. You just have to have access. That's what we're trying to give, equal access.
And kind of like how I see it, or I like to explain, it's like our cell phones, right? Like, I have no idea how my text messages are sent or how the iCloud actually works, but I know I'm using it every single day. And that's what's going to happen with Web3, where it's like, I don't necessarily have to know how your blockchain operates, but if I'm making money from your blockchain, I'm 100% going to use it, right? So that's how we always like to talk about it in, my community, where it's like, how is what we're building affecting you or making you better or making whatever exclusive, and then figuring out how to onboard the masses.
Yeah, I want to add here that when we are using internet at the moment, we're not thinking about the protocol the TCP/IP there. Blockchain must go down the stack. People need to forget about this stuff. Well, are you thinking like when you're opening a website, whether it is a dedicated server that is launched by the company, or it is in Google Cloud or in Amazon or in whatever? Right, you are not thinking about this stuff. It is like completely out of your scope. So I do believe that blockchains, different chains, are going to kind of immerse, and this. It was an interesting idea, by the way. Today, my head of product was bringing this to me. He was saying, "What is the point in the blockchain community, right? Kind of, the community is per blockchain, right? It kind of doesn't make sense. Do we have an kind of internet community or kind of Amazon or Google Cloud community? Probably not. But we do have a mobile game, some kind of particular mobile game, Asphalt or whatever, World of Warcraft community, right? And people are using this particular use case, but yes, they are using internet somewhere down the stack, but that's okay, right? So maybe actually smooth transition here, or at least this can be used later on as a smooth transition. Actually DAOs are the things that are building communities. Like we need to discard the idea of Ethereum like that's pretty kind of hard, right? But okay, let's discard the idea of Polygon community, right? And let's think of the kind of more the use case community, right? And other types of communities.
I think that's a really lovely bridge because community. I mean, you can't talk about Web3 without talking about community. And this phenomenon of DAOs, which obviously I've fallen into, as have you, is a really interesting one, I think, because of the hope that people bring to it and the reasons people are drawn to it. And I'd love if you could just talk to us a little bit about how what you've observed as people are coming into DAOs, why they're coming in, what is it about this promise that's attractive to them in your journey?
Yeah, so I like to say like DAOs are just ideas if you don't have people. So naturally, as people grow and as organizations grow, you have to find a way to teach people how to be good community members. So a lot of times you're in group chats, and let's say if you post something, or even if you post a picture on Instagram, nobody engages. When nobody engages, you naturally like feel insecure about it. You're like, hey, is this not a good idea? Like, what are we doing here? So now with DAOs, you're able to facilitate interactions, but you teach people how important it is to give your opinion, whether it's reacting to a message, whether it's saying, great, that sounds good in a Telegram group. So when it comes to DAOs, you have to start teaching people what DAOs can do when you start to engage, and DAOs will facilitate that. So as you guys know, like DAOs, I like to call it just a community with a shared wallet, right? So imagine if all of us, put $10 into a pool, and then we decide who gets to play as the DJ for our after party. We're all going to be more excited about this party, and then we're all going to be dancing a little bit more because our opinion actually mattered. So with DAOs, how are you going to tweak psychology to get people to take action and create something amazing? So, I mean, Bankless DAO has done an amazing... Bankless is just a buzzword. I mean, when you think of DAO, naturally you think of a bankless DAO. So I'm curious to ask you, I know you're moderating here, but what do you feel is the psychology behind Bankless? Like, why are people so attracted to Bankless?
I wasn't expecting to be answering questions. So I can speak for myself and the people that I know. I think Bankless attracts a lot of people from a philosophical standpoint. In the banking the unbanked, there is a mission, there is something that you can really get behind, and it's really felt, it's really absorbed within the community. But also, if I'm very practical, the quality of the content that Bankless puts out draws really smart people into it, which means that when you start interacting and engaging and collaborating with people in the Bankless community, you meet all these amazing, wonderful people who are coming from the most diverse backgrounds, experiences. I'm part actually of Bankless Consulting. So we execute project work, and I also worked in traditional consulting, and the makeup of traditional consulting teams is fairly homogenous. Like we actually did a psychological profiling, and we all basically had one of two psychological profiles. Like we looked slightly different, but we all thought a lot alike. And actually, when you start putting together groups of people that see the world differently, that have come to it from a different angle, like some of the ideas that were coming up, the innovation that came out of that was really exciting. And that I think it's the quality of the community that is drawn in part by the mission and in part just by the great work that David Hoffman and Ryan Sean Adams do on their content.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like, when you have a mission and a talented group of people and you find a way to facilitate the interactions. How can you make it easier for people to vote? Why should people vote? Are you learning from this community? Are you getting a return on investment on your community? Is my opinion actually making a difference in this community? And once you figure out how to do that, and of course, like going back to it, it's psychology, right? So each DAO is different because each mission attracts a certain type of person. Until you figure that out, that's when your DAO will work. So that's kind of like my takes on DAO. I'm sure are you guys in the DAO space at all?
I mean, not so much, but I'm interested actually. Like, what are the challenges to running a DAO? Like, what do you guys think in terms of logistics, and then also just in terms of like encouraging this like altruistic behavior or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In my opinion, like, well, I'm biased because I'm a community junkie, but definitely getting people to engage, but also long term. So a lot of times with DAOs, I always recommend like, hey, have seasons or temporary. Hey, we're gonna do a 3-month push. We're gonna figure out what works. If you don't want to be involved anymore, you know that you have a deadline. You're like, okay, I could do this for 1 more month, right? So that's a really easy way to get engagement to continue. But besides engagement, from DAO founders, I hear a lot about obviously legal requirements and being in Europe, being based in Miami. I'm sure it's different here. Legal's a hot topic, but also now it's funding because a lot of organizations are turning into DAOs. So you're going to raise funding. So how are you going to handle the funding, the legal, and at the end of the day, the governance? Is it really going to be decentralized governance, or are the core founders still going to have most of the buying power?
The other thing I would say just on that is that, the DAOs are high friction. They are big, noisy rooms without any signposts in them, without it being very easy to know who else is there, where there are a multiplicity of tools, all of which are somewhere on a really noisy Discord server. Like, to actually break through to seeing the really awesome side of DAOs, that you have to make it through a lot of friction, right?
So you have to believe in the cause.
Yeah, I guess it helps.
I would like to pay our attention on the natural DAOs that we have already in our life, and these are countries, and the way how they are working is that they are electing periodically, right? Like every not 3 months, but rather every 4 to 5 years, a parliament. So some kind of councils that are forming this council set, and they are able to execute on a shared wallet, which is the budget of the country, right? And from time to time, they're doing good job, and sometimes they're doing not very good job, and then they are fired, or some kind of impeachment procedures are happening, and then new people are elected, right? And I do believe that in general, this state of affairs is very straightforward for people, because the ordinary citizen is influencing the direction where his country is going on a very specific moments in time, and it is okay for him to get into his head, the statements of these different people whom he is electing, right? And that's okay. And then all of the rest of the time, he's focusing on his own stuff, right? And that's okay. And then these elected people, they have their full-time job to care about the people who elected them. And in the Western countries, and not like in the Eastern European countries, politicians are at least trying to care about the people who elected them, right? And in general about the nation. And that's why we can assume that they're acting kind of in a good will. So I think that again, I put this point periodically on the Web3 conferences. I want to emphasize it here. There are quite a lot of things that are developed by people that we can learn from. Web3 attitude is an attitude of rebellions, right? we're burning down Facebooks, Googles, and Apples of the world that are controlling our data, right? This is kind of the mood of everything that we do. But we also, let's not forget also to learn a little bit from them. And Western democracies are doing extremely well in terms of having sustainable big community that is able to march forward and make life better for their own country. So I think that we can learn from them in general.
Yeah, I think that is a very fair point. It sparks another question. So the reason DAOs have been in the press most recently, from what I've seen, situations like, is it Uki or Oki DAO? How do we say that?
Uki DAO.
Uki DAO. Where they have been renamed as the new Unlimited Liability Corporation, where if you participate in governance, you could be found to be liable for all sorts of things. How do you see the future of DAOs evolving, whether they evolve into almost kind of nation state kind of organizations versus community projects versus kind of for-profit companies? Like there are so many different branches within the DAO space. Are there any trends that you've seen emerging within that?
Yeah, so the way I kind of see it, it's like, you know how when you're starting a company, there's different types of companies. There's nonprofits, there's limited liability companies. I'm sure once we get more developed in the Web3 space, there's going to be different regulations for different types of DAOs. I mean, honestly, I think the best use cases for DAOs is nonprofit DAOs, just because I was back in the nonprofit space, and one of the things that was really, really missing was transparency and shared ownership and governance. So I feel like depending on, based on regulations, I mean, you always go where the money's at. So the first thing that'll probably get regulated are investment club DAOs. Eventually, like the NFT project DAOs that have a lot of money in their funds or their pools. But yeah, I mean, it's better to just be in the know with DAOs, but I don't really know exactly what the future of DAOs are, because we're still figuring out the governance, right? Yeah. Like, is governance really going to be the answer? Because I mean, even in the government, like, is what we're doing with different governments around the world, is that right? Is that the answer?
Yeah, well, at least it is sustainable, right? Yeah. Because what we see in Russia, what is happening with Russian government, this thing, the dictatorship is not a sustainable model, right? So I just don't know what is the better option kind of for governments. If it would be something better, yeah, okay, why not?
Coming back from, I feel like we're kind of drifting into some very deep topics that would merit their own panel. Coming back to blockchain and real use cases, because I love that. Like, for me, one of my private theories, not so private anymore, I guess, is that the next bull run, the next wave will be when we start solving real problems. Like, you know, if you work in tech startup, the first thing is it a problem worth solving? Are you solving a real problem for enough people that they care? And that sounds to me like exactly what you're doing, Ella. And I would love to hear, you know, how receptive are companies to the technology?
Sure. Yeah, I think when we started in 2018, there was actually a lot of companies out there doing real world stuff. You know, you had, I don't know, remittance payments where you were trying to replace Western Union, and instead of people paying 20% to send money home to Venezuela or something, you would pay, you know, a couple of cents. And those are incredible. And we've kind of seen them drop off a bit, honestly. I think that might be in part because of regulation. You know, if the SEC is hunting you down, and maybe you're easier to hunt down if you bridge to the real world, if you touch the real world. And secondly, you know, VC money is crypto VC money is kind of, maybe because of the first point, because of the regulation, has started to dry up a bit in terms of real world use cases. Like, if I talk to my crypto VC friends, they're like, yeah, we don't fund anything that touches the real world. And it's a bit sad, honestly.
Why is that? Did they give you any insight?
Yeah, because I think, you know, with this whole DeFi, you know, Synthetics, which was a blockbuster kind of launch, and, you know, there was this whole new model of DeFi that didn't touch the real world at all. Yeah. Maybe with some under-collateralized loans, you know, in a few cases, yes. Like Goldfinch, for instance, is an amazing example that they give under-collateralized loans in developing countries. But I can name them on two hands maybe, the kind of companies that really do this stuff, and of course they're not as successful as TrueFi or one of the other loan giving companies that don't touch the real world as much. But in saying that, I think there is a few movements that are really exciting. Obviously, we're working in sustainability and in the carbon tracking space, and we capture that information on the blockchain. I think also refi. Refi is a really regenerative finance. So basically, trying to make the planet a better place, and that's an amazing space. And there's some killer players in that space, like Toucan, like Moss. Yeah, I'm forgetting so many of them, but no, like with Amazon NFTs.
There's even a refi DAO.
Yeah, refi DAO, of course, is a great one, great example. And they are solving what is a problem that's not being solved well in the real world. Yeah. So if any of you guys have seen John Oliver's piece on carbon credits, if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. Just 20 minutes, and it'll show you. It's a bit depressing in some way, because we know that we have some big goals to achieve to limit climate change, and we're not, the current systems in the real world are not moving fast enough or well enough. And a lot of these, climate tech, Web3 companies are doing an amazing job. They're providing liquidity to the carbon credit market. They are, reducing double counting. So I think there is a lot of exciting stuff in the space. And I hope with the next big wave, the next bull run, that we do see a lot of these real-world use cases gain a lot more traction.
I'm so glad you brought up refi, because I think it's one of the most exciting and interesting spaces that's emerging. You also brought up another topic that I find very interesting, which is VC participation in Web3. It seems to polarize most Web3 rooms. What are the views of the panel? Should we all be excited and chasing VC cash? Should we be building community and trying to fundraise in different ways? Are grants the way forward? I know Nia is very active in the grant space. What are our thoughts on VC's role of this?
Well, grants are not working.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, grants are not working. They work only for literally small teams. Like if there is a team after the hackathon, they have been hacking, 2, 3, 4 people hacking something, and they would like to do the next step before they're able to actually do the pitch. This is the moment in time when the grant kind of makes sense. After this, it is much better for the team to actually have investors on board. Because investors at this stage, at the pre-seed stage, they're going to get angel investors who are going to support them, who are going to help them, who are going to make connections for them, just people who are on their own side because they have their skin in the game. Mm-hmm. With the protocols just giving out grants like it was during the bull run, like, yeah, I've got a grant, 100K from whatever protocol that you want to name, and and then what happens with this, right? And then people start to deliver, like many teams started to create a very nice business model for themselves, which is kind of getting grants. Which is not a business model for a company; it is a business model for a team. And it's kind of also not very sustainable, right? So it's better to get VC money in general, or maybe not VC money, but investors' money. And these investors may be very different depending on the size of the company. At some point in time, you obviously need to transition to a VC. You cannot collect, even 10 million. It is extremely hard to collect from the individual investors. So yeah.
Monica, can I ask your opinion on this? Because obviously the typical polarization you get is decentralization and raising through the community and community ownership versus VC-backed businesses. So what's your perspective?
I think it really depends on like what your mission is. So let's say if you're a startup in Web3, that really depends on community, or maybe you're aligned with a certain protocol, then it might be more valuable to do like a shared ownership, decentralized. But a lot of times, like I have friends that are in the DeFi space right now, and they're struggling. They can't raise right now, or if they do, it's really bad. evaluation or whatever how it is. I'm not in the VC space at all. But I think it's important to understand like if there's going to be an ROI, whether it's return on time, return on obviously equity, because if a community member has a bad experience, like funding or they put zero point 0.5 ETH into a DAO and they have not received any value, whether it's a business or new connection or education, then that kind of like ruins it for them for at least like a year. So definitely figuring out if your startup is community focused.
So I think that in general, one is not excluding the other.
Yeah.
So just let's take a look at the latest round of Facebook, or let's see that let's pretend that we know what were the parameters of the latest round of the Facebook. Tons of money, and Facebook has a very very big community of the users who are actually using it, right?
Well, do
They
they
are
have a
just not
community or
collecting-
do they have an audience and a user base?
Well,
Because
I don't know.
different.
People like
I think they have-
maybe Facebook is not a good example. Maybe TikTok
Yeah.
is better example, right? Or
Well,
whatever.
it's I think it's communities that are created from the users.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So like, they are less thinking about the kind of the success of Facebook or TikTok as a company, but rather they are using this in order to connect with their friends and share some experiences, right? Uh, but in order for such a big organization to grow, they need to have tons of money, right? And it means that for Mark, he needs to get billions in order to progress forward. And he can just like he can put some really really bad things on the shoulders of the users, right? He can put tons of ads there. He can put some kind of additional things there.
Ruthlessly
Sell
exploit their
more.
data.
Yeah, sell more data and stuff like that. Or he can get money easier from the big funds, right? And kind of you need to balance. All of the blockchain entrepreneurs, they need to balance in between these two things, from my point of view. And from one side, kind of take easier money from VCs, but from the other standpoint, be very very committed to your mission. And in case you're working in the Web3 space, it is obviously should be connected with the blockchain, with the core blockchain values, right? So you need not to sacrifice. And actually, some of the projects are doing kind of great advances there. So a typical approach how to balance on this is that, for example, you're creating an ability for the wide community to invest in your project at a low valuation, and what they get out of this investment is actually kind of some kind of liquid assets that they are able to use right here, right now, while the VCs are getting something that is locked and is going to be delivered very, very down the road, right? And yes, they are going to get more, but people who are getting liquid assets right here, right now, or kind of something that they can work with, they need to be. You need to put more emphasis on this, right? Maybe the early adopter NFTs, they are having more voting power in comparison with the ones who are going to claim their NFTs later on, right? Something like that. And this balance is like it is actually pretty natural, and it makes lots of sense.
Ella, you looked like you wanted to speak before.
I was just going to say that, yeah, we're more in the real world. Maybe that's the benefit of being in the real world, is actually grants can do wonders. I do agree with you. If you're going to take 100K from Polygon, you have to come up with a sustainable business model after it. But for us, obviously working in the sustainability space, you have a lot of money. Europe, the US, they're all looking to, counter. You have the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which has a lot of money, that we focus on now for carbon credits for electric vehicles. So it depends a lot. Is my mic running out? Yeah. It depends a lot on your business model as well, I would say. And VCs, they'll take their pound of flesh. Mm-hmm. They will force your company in certain directions. They will be super strict with timelines. They will, you will have less room to breathe and move and adapt. And okay, crypto VCs will get the decentralized ideas that you want to, hopefully they do, and hopefully they support you in that mission, but others might not, and they might push you to make sacrifices.
Yeah, I think that probably sums up my experience fairly well. So the company I'm with at the moment is VC backed, but they were very thoughtful in how they went about bringing their VCs in. And all of the VCs that have come in are themselves active participants in Web3. The partners are actively involved, and they've got 46 people people and institutions that are funding them. And they've got founders and builders from, and when you can pull that community together like that, you're right, like that unlocks a huge amount of power and benefit. I think it's like all things, it's a tool, and if you use it well, it can be hugely powerful, and I'm sure otherwise it can. So we're going to open for questions in just a couple of minutes. One kind of last question, and it's not the one I told you I was going to ask. So there is this big and beautiful thing that I think most people in this room believe in called Web3 and the potential of Web3. Now, what is it that would have to go wrong for us to this up? Like, what is it that could derail this, that could stop this from becoming a reality?
Bad regulation is the big one, I think, on everyone's mind, especially recently. Sam Bankman-Fried, for those of you who didn't know, wrote a paper on it. Had some great ideas, also had some not so great ideas, perhaps. So there's a lot of heated discussion right now in that space, but I think that's definitely the biggest risk we face at the moment, beyond just the bear market, you know.
So in terms of technological challenges, I do believe since we started as a technological vertical, we're going to finally tackle things. And whether it's going to be ZK or non-ZK or sharded blockchains, whatever, we're going to figure it out. It is simple. The thing that is not simple from my point of view is for us to figure out how we can unite together. Because at the moment, Web3 community as a whole, or Web3 ecosystem, is extremely small. Like in case tomorrow Apple is going to say that our mission now is to kill blockchain, they would be able to do it, because we are just like everyone is trying to compete in the blockchain space with each other. You know, Avalanche is saying to everybody that they are not very good solutions. Let me put it in a good words. And similar things that are happening there. Similar things are happening all around the space. While in fact, our core ideas are not about the competition in between us inside of the ecosystem, right? There are core principles that we all share, and I believe that based on these core principles, we need to unite, and we need to stop competing with each other, get together and kill Google, right? This is what we need to do. And just I believe that in case we would not be able to do it, then that is an extremely big risk that Web2 is actually going to take our ideas and apply it to Web2, and then there will be no Web3, is just going to be Web2 plus.
But if they do that, if they take our technologies and make them their own, doesn't Web3 still win?
No. Taking not technologies, but taking just the ideas. They will never let the user to decide. Take a look at like Apple was never doing marketing on billboards before just recently, and they started to put on the billboards a person who is holding his phone close in his face, and they were putting just one word there, which is privacy. We are protecting the privacy of an iPhone users. And this narrative is for a couple of years already everywhere in where Apple is communicating. But they are not changing anything inside, right? And privacy is also one of the narratives of the blockchain space, right? They're just taking this idea, they're applying to their own communications style, but they're not changing the way how they are working, right? So this is what I'm afraid of a lot.
Ella.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to disagree. I mean, I think we're already much too big with all the blockchains for Apple to kill. And I think, yes, maybe they would do a better user experience. Probably that for sure, But I think once you would join an Apple DAO or, or a Bankless DAO, you would see the authenticity in the Bankless DAO. You would also get rewarded much better unless Apple wants to change up their revenue model significantly. So I think under the hood, people would still have a much better experience, I hope, in Web3. And I think Apple's far away from dominating blockchains.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking in terms of the amount of the users, right? Everyone here, we're sharing the same ideas, and we understand why the value is here. But Apple has 1 billion users, right, in comparison to us, right? So in general, Web3 ideas are not yet sold to everyone.
No, I feel like we're keeping everybody from the bar. So, Monica, I'm going to ask you for a hot take on either what could go wrong or a hope. We could end on an optimistic note before we open the floor.
I guess I could do the hope, just because we got to end on a high here. Wag me. All right, no. But no, I think it's definitely overcoming fear. I feel like a lot of people haven't gone into Web3 because of the fear of security or regulations or even mass adoption. Like if you're unfamiliar with something, so us as a whole should definitely focus on how we can simplify the Web3 message and hope to educate everybody around us, especially our friends and family who aren't into Web3. So yeah, overcoming fear is my answer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to all of the organisers for putting together the most diverse panel I've ever sat on. It's nice to see the ratios flipped. I don't know if it was deliberate, but well done. And thank you everyone for the questions. Without any further delays, the bar is that way.
Get some wine.